ideas, inspiration, innovation. This is The Game Changer. And now here's your host, Chicky Fitzgerald.
Good afternoon. This is Chicky Fitzgerald, and I am with the Game Changer Network. And one of the things that we love doing is talking to our game-changing clients. And Kimberly is a new client of ours with Alabaster House. And again, let me try to get this right. Kimberly, now I'm going to forget. Genau. Okay. Thank you so much. Kimberly, I am just so excited to hear the story of Alabaster House and a little bit of your personal backstory. That's where we always like to start with our guests.
Yeah. So, Chicky, thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity to be with you today. And I just love that we're talking about Alabaster House. We have 25 years serving as a spiritual resource to elected leaders and their families. And so it's just an incredible opportunity to really come alongside them through confidential prayer, biblical devotions, and friendship. Those are really our three main points in how we interface with leaders.
And so give me a bit of the backstory of why Washington, D.C., what is the passion for your audience?
You know, I think what is so often overlooked, but yet so important, is that as we look at these different leaders' lives, we have to realize the amount, you just think of the amount of handshakes that they have, right? And the amount of opportunities that they have to meet new people, their constituents, the states that they represent. The influence is vast. And so as we can come together and stand with them to have healthy marriages, you know, a strength in their faith and the relationship with Christ, that actually impacts literally millions of people like us. Because if they're having those that strength from their faith and their foundation, it's going to impact their legislation, their decision-making capabilities, and so forth. And so it's just so important that they are supported.
Right. Well, I love that. And it's so easy to sit back and criticize. And, you know, we know that there's a lot of that going on, whether it is across the aisles or just being dissatisfied with our own representation. And, you know, the church as a whole will pray at, you know, I would say a rather high superficial level, you know, praying for our leaders, praying, you know, but not really specifically for individuals and their spouses. I mean, that's one of the things I love the most about what you guys are doing. And I'd like to hear about some of the specific programs. But again, I would love to hear a little bit of your backstory, because our listeners always love to hear, what is it that makes a game changer? How do you start out? You know, was there something that stuck out to you when you were in school that just pushed you in this direction? Was it when you met your husband? I mean, give me a little bit of the backstory.
Sure. I think just growing up, I'm from an athletic family. And so I played Division I volleyball in college. And so you have that game-changing theme coming through there. Just the competitiveness and so forth. My dad was also a former NFL football player. So again, you have a lot of that interwoven in our lives of just competition, and just no obstacle is too high. You can just accomplish that. And then you have the faith perspective, where it's, you know, really you look at through Christ, all things are possible, and so forth. So you really weave, I think, some of those two backgrounds together, and it tells you a little bit about where I came from. Which is really very working with leaders in my family, and also a high level of, competition. So if you're looking at, politics and Alabaster House, you're thinking these are high level leaders, right? And there are plenty of obstacles to overcome. And so I think The Lord really had placed me there with a heart and a desire to actually equip leaders and to encourage them, to pray for them, to stand with them, and amidst the incredible obstacles that they face really on a daily basis, whether that is through their families, the travel schedules that they face, flying into Washington, coming home, often leaving their spouse at home, their kids at home, seeing them for a few moments on the weekend, and then
Right.
trying to maximize those and keep those relationships healthy and intact. And then, of course, to do what the constituents actually elected them to do, to be successful as a legislator as well. Typically in Congress is just a drop, I think kind of a backdrop, really. Hmm.
Right. Right. So tell me about some of the programs that you have throughout the year that allows these people to get together and to really connect, not only with each other, but with their own real backstory and issues. Because, I know in the midst of the busyness of all of our lives, quite often we don't take time to be quiet. And sometimes you have to be quiet to do that self-reflection. So tell me a little bit about those programs.
Sure. There's a number of ways that we just found that God put on our heart to actually reach out to different elected leaders and their families. So we host a chapel in particular. That's a little bit more, I would say, of an opportunity for folks to just go deeper. I often do a devotional and then a worship set, whether that's live or otherwise, and then also opportunity to pray over them individually. And so we actually do a number of those throughout the year, depending on who it is that we're working with and where the location is, but often just right there in the heart of our nation's capital. And so those are fabulous. We also host different retreats. So we're about 45 minutes from the Capitol. And so we have 10 acres, and we're out here with a lot of, surrounded by undeveloped land, if you will. And so it just can be a really fantastic way for them to just regroup and then get sent back. So whether that our subject often I'll say is how do you balance the demands of Washington with your faith? That's often
Right.
a great subject because it never gets old. You're always working on figuring out how to find that right balance with family, with career, with your faith. And so kind of getting those reminders and being able to just digest some of those personal things and the levels that you're walking with is just a great refreshing opportunity. So those are a couple of things that we do. We also host different receptions where we build community there. We host a Capitol Coffee once a year that's bipartisan, where we bring different members as well as congressional spouses in. So there's a lot of different things that we're doing, and of course, upcoming, we're doing a leadership summit as
Well, I'm
well.
glad you brought that up because that really was going to be my focus because I know not only do you have great plans for it, but you also have some needs regarding it. And I want to be able to share with our listeners of how they can support your efforts at Alabaster House. So tell us about the Leadership Summit.
So good. We are so excited. This is our first annual leadership summit. We're really pioneering this on 9/11, if you can imagine, right? You're going back to 9/11 and also the 10th. So September 10th and 11th. And what you
Right.
found was many people coming together that you wouldn't ordinarily see, whether they were praying on the Capitol steps, etc. But this leadership summit is going to actually draw in leaders from business, ministry, and government. And we're used to having all of those in their separate lanes, if you will,
Mhm.
having their own conferences. And so what we'll find is also a big part of it will be strategic roundtables. So we'll have different members of Congress that business leaders, ministry leaders will be able to actually ask those questions and say, hey, this is what's happening in my home state. Congressman, what are your thoughts on this? How is my business going to be impacted ideally in the year ahead? Do you have a forecast for that? And so rather than just simply hearing a member give a speech, for instance, you'll actually be able to dialogue and engage. And I
Mm.
think to get that important information that different ones will be seeking, especially in a year when there's much happening, whether that's legislatively in an election year, culturally, even from a Christian perspective. So we're
Right.
also launching, if you can imagine, we talked about our background with a sports. So we're launching a leadership. It's called the NFL leadership panel. So we'll be engaging actually, former NFL players and this type of thing to get another angle on leadership. So it's a perfect opportunity for those people that especially want to hone their leadership skills, no matter what sphere you're currently invested in.
Oh, I just love that. So how can people help this effort? What is the right audience to actually participate and come and be a part of these roundtables?
Sure.
Give us a little thumbnail of that.
Sure. I think, again, since we have a fairly broad reach, a very broad group, if you have an interest and you find yourself as a business leader, maybe you're a ministry leader, these are really those target avenues that we're looking for these individuals to come and participate on this. It is honing those leadership skills where God has placed you. But even into that extent, there will be people that, again, depending on where they are, their faith background, they may just barely be starting on a faith journey. They may be open to that. They may not have one at all. And so it's really, I feel, whoever God might draw, if you will. That's our perspective, right? So
Right.
we have different sponsorship opportunities. So you'll find different businesses that'll come on board and be sponsoring this, or maybe Christian ministries that'll come on board or
Hmm.
not. So we really do have, I think there should be something for everyone, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Alabasterhouse.org is our website, and the registration is up right now. But we love for different people to actually consider becoming a sponsor and what that does for them. Let's say they're a business leader or they're representing a business. We can actually, through that sponsorship, provide awareness and of course, exposure, networking, recognition, whether that's table, there'll be a number of different avenues that they can take a look at, the
Right.
different levels.
Well, as I was talking about churches, really wanting and trying to walk that fine line of not being partisan, but still wanting to support what's going on in our government in a positive way to, create unity. And I always talk about how people are quite often touched by stories that they hear, and they're touched, but they're not moved. And so I really encourage our audience to, check your heart of whether supporting our elected officials is something that you feel strongly about. And if you do, this is something material that you can do. And again, we encourage you to be moved to action to either attend the leadership conference. And you reminded us September 10th and 11th in Washington, D.C. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, you are a new partner of Traveling to Give. And so the Traveling to Give tool is going to be available to people who want to attend to find available lodging nearby. And we will be donating from our revenue stream from those bookings back to Alabaster House. So we are actually a sponsor of the event. So Kimberly, can you tell us what was instrumental in your decision to partner with Traveling to Give?
Well, I just simply love the idea. I thought it was so effective that it was just really one-stop shopping. You could put in exactly what you needed and not just one option, but you had multiple options that would come up. And then, you could choose whichever one suited your needs. So I love that it was really more all-inclusive. And I also loved the opportunity that you had with the best price guarantee on there. So it makes people feel like, some people want to trade, let's say, charitable giving in one category, and then they think because they're donating, they're not going to get a good deal. But this one is actually ensuring that you get a good deal. And as you do that, Alabaster House is also a recipient of the, benefiting from it. And so I love that they were actually paired together. So I think that's just a fabulous combination because people are looking for value.
Right. And I love that you mention the intersection of travel and giving, because we feel obviously very strongly about that as a company. And we do believe that companies that give more make more. And the more generous you can be with your time, your talents, and your treasures to an initiative like what Alabaster House is doing, we really believe that the benefit on the back end is just undeniable. In fact, we believe it's as true as the principle of gravity. You can say that you don't believe in gravity, but step off of your second story roof, and you'll find out pretty quickly that you can't deny the impact of gravity. We believe giving is actually exactly the same. It's like breathing out. You have to breathe back in. And when the tide goes out, it has to come back in. And giving has those same principles embedded in it. And so we really encourage folks, again, what Kimberly mentioned about traveling to give, you are giving with your travel, but it's not coming out of your pocket. Solutions is actually donating out of our profitability. So you travel, we give. And that's very different than going to the grocery store and rounding up your transaction where it is coming out of your pocket. And, somebody does end up having to pay for that. But we just believe in the words that we speak, right? In give more, make more. And so we put our money where our mouth is. So Kimberly, thank you so much for your time. And again, will you tell your URL one more time so that people can easily find you?
Sure, Chicky. And again, just thank you so much. I would say two things. I would say, even if you can't make the Leadership Summit date, there are actually three things we'd love for you to do. One is to go to alabasterhouse.org, of course, our website. There are 2 videos on that homepage that can familiarize you with our ministry, and super encouraging that God is still alive and well and working in the heart of our nation. And not only watch those videos, but you could sign up for our email updates. And what that will do is allow you to receive future invitations like the Leadership Summit that we're talking about right now. You'll be on the insider track of being able to get those first right away so you can get your seat. And then, of course, we have a give tab. We were just talking about generosity, and we function simply on the donations and the generosity of others that say, you know what, I'm concerned about our country. I'm concerned about our nation. What can I do? And people are struggling. How could I even pray? I want to say there's just so much there that we can offer in the realm of sharing hope with folks that God is still working in our nation. And so there's a give tab. If you could support the work, we mentioned just very briefly some of the programs and some of the things that we're doing. But, especially as we're working with different governors and governor spouses to create even the funding that we can travel and start going out to these different states and be even more effective. So if you could hit that give link right on our website at alabasterhouse.org, the Leadership Summit page is also up at that same link, alabasterhouse.org. You just click right on the leadership button and away you go. So Chicky, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity to just share with your audience and listeners. And we're so grateful for Traveling to Give and the partnership that we've created with you.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. And just to end our conversation today, tell us what was behind the selection of the name Alabaster House. I know there has to be a story, and just the glorious logo that you have created. It's one of the best that I've ever seen.
This logo actually took about 2 years for us to create, and that was really honestly just trying to seek what to depict what it is that we're doing. I think a lot of people understand, let's say, missions to third world countries or, very simple, needs, but how do you actually minister to leaders in government? And so what you're looking at even behind me is what you see of those 3 pillars. So you're looking at really the symbol of one of 2 things, the 3 branches of government, which we very much are ministering in. And then you could also look at that as your Father, Son, Holy Spirit, right? So we're in that as well. But the other thing that you see on there is that really that's the alabaster jar. And you think about that from scripture of it being a broken vessel, right? It's often the top is broken off, and it's an occasion that is given different times, like even a wedding, and there is a year's worth of wages that have been stored up in all of this. But I want to say that I felt like the Lord saying, yes, it is His Spirit that's being poured out on these leaders, and that's really what you're seeing, that poured out jar. But sometimes we forget that these leaders are just like you and I, and they have needs just like the rest of us. And so we almost put them on a pedestal and feel that they're successful and so forth. But in fact, they really have very much the same needs as you and I do. And we need to be reminded of that is really Christ pouring out his love, his spirit on our leaders. And so I think that's probably a bit of the synopsis. You'll see the olive branch that is around the logo as well. Again, just that peace. And for us, that's simply allowing government leaders to, what I would say, encounter the peace of God. When we do a number of these chapels, interestingly enough, it's been described, just a quick story in closing. We had a number of different spouses that were in this chapel room, and we had someone new that came in this particular day, and she was kind of looking around the room, and I just want to say, when everyone's in there, everybody's all dolled up and they've got whatever their wonderful outfits are for the day. And what happened was, as they started to come into the room, they started to kind of recline and lean back in the chairs, and someone said, "Oh, had you not been here before?" And she was like, "Oh no, this is my first time." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to be so amazing." And what she said, "You're really in for a treat. This is going to be like going to a spa." And I love that, because what we're talking about, even within the logo, those olive branches and that peace, right, that's extended, they were trying to look for words to describe the peace of God that you encounter in a setting like some of the chapels that we do. So with that, that's a little bit of a long-winded answer to the logo, but hopefully it encourages folks that is something that we definitely, I would say, are known for. Really, we want people to go vertical, if you will, as opposed to horizontal. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of fellowship groups where you're dialoguing and you're talking about maybe this, that, and the other thing. But what I'm interested in is having them dialogue and actually talk with God, whether that's through reflection, scripture. Some of these chapels, as we deliver these devotionals, and we only have a very almost a short amount of time to do it, because again, government leaders' lives are very much scheduled for 3, 4, 5 things a day, a night, receptions, and so forth. So you have to be very targeted, and those are the things we love to bring in there. It's the peace of God to the midst of the chaos.
Well, Kimberly, I know for me and for our team, we have just been so excited to hear about what you're doing, because again, it's so easy to get caught up in all of the pressure and the discourse and the, just all of the negative side of looking at our government, and to know that there is a group that is really focusing on providing material support and help, and not just again the high level, "Oh, I'm going to pray for my government," but being very, very purposeful about that. And we are just so grateful for what you're doing, and we are so glad to support you. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been amazing. And hopefully we've encouraged, the audience to go, "Wow, I never knew that Alabaster House was out there and existed." And we would love for you to share this show with others, and also our resource with our website, and build a relationship with the audience and bring them in to see what God will be doing in the years ahead.
Thank you so much, Kimberly.
You've been listening to The Game Changer. Ideas, inspiration, innovation with Chicky Fitzgerald.